So this lecture is about the evolution of sex. We've already heard how just the existence of sex and this shuffling effect that it has, recombining genetic material from parents, is really important in terms of maintaining variation. But you might wonder, researchers do, how did sex arise in the first place? Isn't this quite a complicated thing to do? So this lecture is about that. So we're going to quickly recap what it is, what we mean by sex in this context, the different types of sexual reproduction that exist, the consequences, some of which you already know, and then why it is such a puzzle that it exists. So genetic systems can be sexual or asexual. And the asexual system is just this simple copying from one generation to the next. And this can be, there's various forms of this. Binary fission in bacteria, where there's separate spores. Budding in organisms like Hydra. So this is mother. Here. It's just emerging from the mother's body. So soon this guy will separate from the mother and be free living. In plants, you get vegetative reproduction. You've all seen this, where, or for example, you can take a plant, many plant species anyway, and take a cutting and then stick it in some soil, and with a bit of luck, you'll get a new plant, independent plant. There's fragmentation is kind of like a version of this vegetative reproduction, where new organisms will grow from fragments of the old one. So in plants, it's very common. If you know this plant species called guvel, not guvel. What's it called? In English, it's ground elder. The name will come to me. Huh? No. It's this one that's really annoying. It invades your garden and you just can't get rid of it. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, it's this plant. It was apparently brought here by Romans, brought to Europe, Northern Europe by Romans who like to eat it. Apparently it's quite good if it's young in salads. But if it gets in your garden and you try and get it out, it spreads by these runners under the ground, and you can fragment it. It really easily breaks, and each of these little segments becomes a new plant. It's very hard to get rid of. This kind of reproduction exists all over the place in all different taxa. And then we have a type of parthenogenesis, like the sort of virgin birth type of reproduction, which is quite common in invertebrates and quite uncommon in vertebrates, but you do see it. So there's some famous, interesting examples in sharks that do this type of reproduction. So sexual reproduction is just the name given to the type of reproduction that takes genetic material from both parents, basically, to create a new individual. So this recombination effect, this shuffling of genetic material from both parents, means that their offspring are like a mixture of both parents. A complete lack of sexual reproduction is quite rare, and many can do both, depending on the conditions. Now, there's a lot of variety in the type of sexual reproduction. So even bacteria that you might think of as just being simply undergoing this binary fission, they have a form of sexual reproduction called bacterial conjugation, which is where you get material. So this is two parents, and you get this piece of DNA called a plasmid that will latch on to some of the material in one parent, and then during fission, or rather the plasmid will allow material to transmit between one and the other. So it's like a vector to carry genetic material from one one bacteria to the other. So this is recombination without reproduction. In algae, in yeast, and fungi, although there might not be sexes, there are different mating types, and these are thought, we'll come on to this in a minute, these are thought to be like a kind of precursor to having different sexes, or maybe just a form of different sexes that we're just not calling sexes. So they are these types, you can think of them as kind of like genotypes, but the result of having these different types is that it controls who can reproduce with who. So recombination can only occur if the mating types are different from each other. So it's similar to sex. But there may be lots and lots of different types. So it's like an early form of sex differences. In aphids, so this one of the key examples of parthenogenesis is in aphids, these little insects that feed on your plants sometimes. Aphids are quite unusual insects because they produce live young. They can produce live young. They can produce live young or eggs, depending on how the weather is. And they are interesting also because they can be sexual and asexual. So they're asexual in the spring and the summer, and the mother is only producing females. She's just copying herself. And then in the autumn they become sexual. They do sexual reproduction. So their life cycle is quite complicated, and it looks like this. So in summer, they're just going down this cycle here, reproducing asexually, producing live offspring, and then when winter comes and autumn comes, they reproduce sexually. So there's quite a lot of different variety. And sex, when it does exist, has a whole bunch of consequences. The most important one, and the one that we've talked about already, is this recombination, this shuffling of genotypes among parents. But other ones which are kind of obvious, but maybe you haven't thought about, is that firstly, if there's two sexes with different, this allows them to be different, right? So it allows them to be different in just morphologically, so males look different from females, but it also allows differences in the gametes. So there's no reason, well, at least on the face of it, why the gametes of one sex should be different from another. So why do we have eggs and sperm? Why not two sperm, for example? So it allows us. So this is the term for this is anisogamy. So the iso meaning the same gametes, and not the same gametes. So it allows. So the fact that there are two sexes allows there to be differences between gametes, and this is illustrated with this picture here. This is, I think it's a human egg, and these are the sperm, the little blue things. Massive difference in size, which leads to the question: why is there this difference in size? Why is it so extreme? We'll come on to that in a minute. It also kind of opens the door to the existence of sexual selection. I mean, if there's no difference between the sexes, then sexual selection cannot happen. There won't be male competition for females. There won't be females trying to choose the best male and so on. So there won't be any sexual displays. Peacock's tails wouldn't exist like that. Everything would be kind of boring. Because when you think about it, most of the really striking features in the natural world are the result of this competition for mates and sexual selection. So, colourful displays and flowers and so on, they're all to do with sexual selection. And this occurs because the production of, when size differences do evolve, we'll come on to that, the larger one will be more expensive than the smaller one. So the fact that there's an expensive gamete and cheap gametes means that there will be this sexual selection. It also opens the door to various processes that will determine sex. So this could be, the most obvious one is the random Mendelian lottery of, do you receive X and Y or XX? But other organisms have different mechanisms. So the next part of the class is about why sex is a puzzle. So sex exists, it has these consequences, it leads to interesting things. Why is it that biologists focus on it? Why are we obsessed with sex? And it all comes down to the fact that sex is really costly. So your offspring only share, on average, half of your genes, right? Which means, well, that's, if the name of the game is transmitting your genetic material to the next generation, that's what governs your fitness, then wouldn't it be much better to be selfish about it and reproduce asexually, because then one offspring equals 100% of your genes. So to balance things out between asexual and sexual, the sexual reproducing organism has to do twice as much work. It has to produce 2 offspring to get the same amount of genetic material represented in the next generation. It's also really difficult to find a mate, potentially. You could, rather than just sitting there and budding off, having a really easy time of it, you have to go out and into the world and try and find a mate. And elaborate mechanisms have evolved to do that. And so this is another result of just the existence of sex. These different behaviours and biologies are purely the result of sex existing. So pheromones exist because of sex. Different behaviours like swarming and aggregation of individuals into breeding colonies or breeding masses results. Co-evolution, it largely exists because of this as well. So thinking of insect pollinators, plants wouldn't need to have pollinators if they could reproduce asexually. Using the wind or sea currents to fertilize as well. So these elaborate mechanisms kind of pose the question, well, why bother with all of this stuff if you could just do it asexually? It seems like a lot of effort to go to, but there's huge costs. So yeah, some examples of this to illustrate. So aggregating behaviour, all over the place here. Pheromones, butterflies and moths finding each other's mates via pheromones. So moths can apparently detect extremely tiny amount of pheromone miles away. And this is another example. That the amount of waste that you see here. So there's broadcast spawning. This is all sperm. So they're just super wasteful. Why bother? So it's a puzzle. It's a super interesting puzzle for lots of biologists. This famous biologist Graham Bell called it the queen of problems in evolutionary biology, and he published an influential essay. I think it was just called A World Without Sex, talking about how boring it would be if there was no sex. So I've already mentioned this twofold cost of sex. So that's one of the costs. And I'll talk about two other types of costs now, just to highlight these disadvantages. So the twofold cost of sex is also called the cost of males. Males are wasteful. If you have a sexually reproducing female producing 2 offspring in her lifetime, and the sex ratio is 50-50, so she's going to produce 1 male, 1 female. And that offspring, that pair will, then the female will produce another pair, and so on. If a mutation arises, this is where we get to kind of link up population biology and evolutionary biology, and talk about population growth as fitness. If a mutation arises that allows asexual reproduction, that female is still producing 2 offspring per month, but it doubles the rate of population growth because now this one increases 2 and this one increases 2, and now we've got 4 after these. Carry on. So the asexual mutant is going to be much, much fitter. If you remember this model that I showed, where you have these sliders to alter the fitness benefits of some mutation. On that, when I was showing you that, I was giving it a 1% or 2% advantage of proliferation through the population really quite quickly. This is a doubling of fit, which is huge. So it's not just fitter, it's massive fitter. So the outcome of this idea is that the asexual mutant will invade the population, the sexual mutant will go extinct, the original type will go extinct, and we'd only be left with asexual. So the end result of this sort of thinking is that males are working with this. So that's quite a straightforward and simple idea, but it shows that there's this massive cost. Another cost is this things called meiotic drivers or selfish cytoplasmic elements. There's 2 types of genetic material that we have. We have the nucleus material, which is what we normally think of as being our genetic material, and then we have cytoplasmic kind of genetic material that is sitting in the cytoplasm of the cell and it's independent from the nuclear material. So we normally think of those as being, all of that genetic material as being transmitted together to the next generation. But because sexual reproduction is not a simple copying of material, but all material is copied. Not all material is copied, so this allows, what people say is that it opens the door to allowing distortion of meiosis. So there can be kind of, you can think of it as battles going on within your genetic material that are saying, that where genes are saying, transmit me, favour me, I want to go, leave that guy behind. So there are genes existing which can manipulate the Mendelian process so that it's no longer a very fair lottery. It becomes an unfair lottery. And meiosis is sort of distorted. There's an example of this in the sex chromosome, which is shown in buffalo. The normal transmission is just 50%, 50-50 lottery of either male or female. So you get a mix of the X and the Y, which produces 50% sons, 50% daughters. And there's a mutant version of the X chromosome, which basically somehow, we don't know the exact mechanisms, prevents the transmission of the Y, so that it favours two pairs, so the X. So the Y sperm die, the X survive, and you're left with 100% daughters. So these meiotic drivers can distort the normal rules of inheritance. This is an extreme example, but other examples exist. There's also other genes, these cytoplasmic genes that are non-nuclear. For example, in mitochondria, in animals, and chloroplasts, in plants. And these are thought to also be able to influence the rules of meiosis. At least there's potential there to do it. So this is more of a sort of theoretical thing, but the fact that your genetic material is not just your nuclear genetic material, but also in things like the mitochondria and chloroplasts, allows chloroplasts and mitochondria to influence the transmission. So this could be a cost, this distortion. Another big cost is that is the breaking up of favourable combinations of genes that work together well. So thinking about, if your parents have survived, or you have survived, and you're going to become a parent long enough to reproduce, then that's like you've already passed the test. You can reproduce. Your genetic material is pretty good. You're surviving in the environment. So why mess up a good thing? Why break up this good team? Because when you reproduce asexually, this good team is just going to be passed on. Your offspring are going to be just as fit as you are. In sexual reproduction, the team will be split apart in unpredictable ways. So you're allowing the possibility that your offspring will not be as fit as you. So there's these three costs. The first one, the twofold cost, the wasteful males, and this one, kind of super obvious. This distortion of meiosis is a bit more weird and uncertain, but these are the three main costs that people like to talk about. So given that there's all these costs, why is sex so common? This is the big puzzle. So there must be huge advantages to the existence of sex, right? Because there are these big disadvantages. So we need to balance out. These advantages are that it accelerates the rate of evolution, it cleans mutational damage, it eliminates mutations, several mutations all at once, so it's efficient at removing and cleaning up damage, and it can create rare genetic combinations. So I'll go through these now. So if you're asexual, and if the system is asexual and some individuals get a mutation that is beneficial, it's really hard for that beneficial mutation to proliferate through the population because it's only being passed on slowly via reproduction, like, to the direct line of descendants of this individual. When it's sexual, these mutations can be passed through the population because there's this mixing, the parents are coming together. So these mutations, different mutations, can be combined in different ways via sexual reproduction. Another advantage is that some, probably a lot, maybe even most mutations are harmful. And in asexual reproduction, those harmful mutations will stay all together. So you're going to be passing on accumulated harmful mutations down the line. But in sexual reproduction, because of this shuffling, you're dealing out your harmful mutations amongst your offspring. So the chances of your several offspring all having the same set of harmful mutations is really small. They'll have one or two maybe, but they won't have the whole set. So this is beneficial. It can also accelerate the rate of evolution. This is an illustration of this acceleration effect. If you have asexual reproduction, it's this simple copying, and it might take a very long time before, so for example, if B is more, allele B is beneficial, it's just going to be the case that this line is just going to be better than this line. It's going to take a very long time for a mutation to create B arises in this line. It has to do all the work itself, essentially. But if there's sexual reproduction, then the beneficial material can make its way into the genetic lineage of this other guy early on. Structure. Okay? So then this lineage is already benefited here. So proliferation of B through the whole population takes a long time here and not so long here. Another advantage is the sort of cleaning up effect that sexual reproduction can have. So with asexual reproduction, once a mutation has arisen in your genetic lineage, you're basically stuck with it. You're copying from one generation to the next, so you're going to copy this mutation from one generation to the next. So then harmful mutations will just accumulate through time, continually. But sexual reproduction can get rid of those mutations via this process that people call Muller's ratchet. Because offspring are different from their parents, so there is a chance, even if you have a mutation, even if one of the parents has a mutation, a harmful mutation, that some of your offspring will not have that mutation. And then those are going to do really well. The one with the harmful mutation is not going to do well, so the harmful mutation will die out. It will go extinct. So that's only possible with sexual reproduction. And the fact that there is sexual reproduction allows this cleaning effect to be even more efficient, because if you think about how, let's say you've got let's say there's several mutants, several harmful mutations. Individuals with a lot of them are going to do really badly. Individuals with a few of them are going to do a little bit badly. Individuals with not many of them will do better. Individuals with no harmful mutations will do the best. Right? So it has built into it, sexual reproduction has built into it this strong effect of being able to removing mutations with most force, with most efficiency, when there are a lot of them. So it can. So when recombination happens and the cars are dealt out to the next generation, those that are unlucky and receive a lot of bad mutations are going to do really bad, and they will immediately go extinct. So it's a very efficient way of cleaning, because the more harmful mutations that you have, the more likely it is that you're going to go extinct very quickly. And when the poor ones do badly, they take those harmful mutations with them. That makes sense. So there's a few benefits there. The final benefit is this production of rare variants. And the thinking about this benefit of these rare variants comes from thinking about parasites. So parasites, a parasitic lifestyle is very common. And you can think of most organisms, probably every organism has a parasite. And we are engaged in an arms race between the host and the parasite. The host wants to get rid of the parasite wants to get energy from the host in some way. When the hosts are encountering parasites, that you'll have several parasites, several variants. They're going to evolve defenses against ones that are most common. This is the idea that if you get a rare disease that has never been encountered in Europe suddenly comes here, like Ebola or something, we're going to be stuffed because we don't have any defenses. So we have defenses against things that we commonly see. And this process of, which I talked about before, negative frequency dependent selection, means that rare genotypes will tend to do better than common ones. So if the parasite has this rare combination of, if the parasite is rare and your body and the host body hasn't seen it very much, then it will have no defenses against it. It will have few defenses against it. So that rare parasite will do well, and it will infect lots of people, lots of individuals, but then it will become common. Yeah. And then defenses, that the host will develop defenses against this common parasite because it's common, and it will become rare. So you get this cycling. It's actually exactly the same kind of cycling as Lotka-Volterra dynamics. It's modeled using the same kind of models. So we're in this constant battle with parasites, pathogens, and asexual reproduction, because it's slow, because it leads to slow evolution rather than fast evolution, would be too slow to keep up. So the idea with this hypothesis is that sex exists as a defense against parasites. It's to speed up the rate of evolution. And this is called, that hypothesis is called the Red Queen hypothesis, because it's based on the Alice in Wonderland Red Queen, who said at some point it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. So you're doing a lot of work. Evolution is doing a lot of work trying to build up defenses and learn how to defend against parasites just to maintain fitness. If you stop that work, the host will go extinct. And when you think about it, it's not just the host, it's the parasite that's also doing that work. Right? So the parasite has its own problems. It's trying to do well too. So it's quite hard to find evidence for this. A lot of that work that I've just told you about is theoretical, mainly because it's quite hard to run experiments with a long enough time frame to study evolution. So it's quite hard to study evolution experiments, especially something like the evolution of sex, which is the evolution of sex is a rare event. But there is some evidence for it. So there's been experiments on organisms, fast reproducing organisms like algae, where people have looked at rates of evolution. So these algae can reproduce sexually or asexually, and they see rates of evolution being faster in sexual reproducing and the frequency of sexual reproduction is correlated with the number of parasites in some species. So there's this nice study on this snail. So that's, I think it's a quarter. So small coin. These are tiny little snails, and they can reproduce asexually or sexually. You can collect them. You can collect from the environment a bunch of these snails and ask, are they reproducing sexually or asexually? Are there males and females in this population, or are they just females? So you can quantify the proportion of sexual reproduction that's happening in different locations, and then you can ask how many, what percentage of these snails have parasites. So you can correlate the proportion of sexual reproduction with the amount of parasites, and you see a correlation, so that the more sexual reproduction there is, the less parasites there are, which supports this idea that sex is a tool to help defend against parasites. There's quite a few explanations there, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4, for the existence of sex, that explains the existence of sex, that sort of counteract this big theoretical cost. And it's quite tempting to want a simple explanation that it is because of this, but it's probably just a mixture of different explanations. Multiple explanations are okay.